So, in this session, we're going to go over some material related to metrics and ROI, or return on investment, related to training and development or learning and development. Now, I believe you know quite a bit about metrics with all the courses that you've taken in the past, certainly the HRIS course, but you might not be fully versed in metrics related to training and development itself. So, metrics in general is a measure, right? When you measure something, you're doing metrics, and the actual measure is called a metric. Now, in all of HR world, there's quite a few metrics that we use to do what we call evidence-based decision making, or really anything to do with evidence. So, a metric or a number or set of words or any measure actually provides you evidence to make credible business decisions. Now, not every organization looks at metrics the same way, although metrics are everywhere, just to let you know. Some people make decisions just based on intuition or managerial judgment, and they believe that that's the best thing to do. But whenever you can back up what you did or the outcomes or the results of what you did with numbers, I think you can gain a little bit of political power. You can certainly prove your cause, your project that you want to get forward, and you could actually convince other people that it's a good idea, or that what you in fact did, the resources and the effort you put into doing something, was well worth it. And that might just result in a promotion or a raise for you. So, listen, in general in HR, common metrics are, for example, turnover rate, or absenteeism rate, or time to fill a position, a requisition. There's a lot of them: accident rate, severity rating, frequency rating. Specific to learning and development, though, imagine just collecting data. I mean, you can't be so lazy about it in business. I know people are busy in HR. Sometimes we kind of say we're not going to collect the data. But if you have a good HRIS and you have access to pivot tables, for example, there's no reason not to collect data. For example, if you were offering $600,000 worth of training, how hard would it be to collect that information? We did $600,000 worth of training. And then maybe break that down by the business area you spent it on, maybe even by the department, or specifically the job. Because a job translates into what we call competencies, right? Think about it. A job requires a person to do something, and when they do it, they're actually using some sort of competency. We hire based on competencies, so we probably train based on competencies. In fact, you do train. Training and development is all about building new competencies, or enforcing or enhancing existing competencies. So if you can take a total cost for a particular job, a group of people doing a job, and you can calculate, I spent $50,000 on this training, and then you watch the people after the training, how well they're doing. Was there an improvement in performance, for example? Then you can prove that your training worked. Now, other common metrics in learning and development are training dollars per employee, full-time equivalent. Sometimes you use it for part-time people as well, right? Or total employees. How many events were completed successfully? That means people enrolled in courses or workshops or coaching. How many finished it unsuccessfully? How many were invited? How many didn't show up? How many didn't respond at all? I mean, these are all good metrics. For example, if you had to do AODA training and only 50% of your employees participated, you should know that number, because first of all, that's a violation of a regulation, right? How many people started it but never finished it? How long did they spend on the training? Did they skip through the content? How many times did they pass a quiz or test or an assessment? How many people retook it? How many times did a person watch a video? This gives you insights and clues as to how to tweak your training, but also the effectiveness of it. And don't forget the employee feedback. Collecting data on employee and manager feedback is as important as seeing how well they do. So if a majority of your employees who took training said they really hated it, the flow wasn't right, the aesthetics weren't right, it wasn't user friendly, it was irrelevant, but they did better on the job because of it, that gives you clues. If they said bad things and it did not help them at all, then don't invest more in training. I mean, a lot of companies just go out and buy training or develop it, give it to their employees, and check off boxes. I did it, I did it, I did it. but not really realizing what the impact was. And the reason they would do that is to brag to the world, the business community, that, hey, we do training. And then, of course, there's organizations that don't do any training at all. Unless, of course, it's a compliance measure, which means the government regulates. They're requiring it. And I would ask you a question. What are some recent regulated or compliant measure training that businesses have to do? And what comes to mind is working at heights training. I mean, employers weren't doing this, weren't training people to safely work at heights, whatever that height might be, let's say 6 meters or more. But because of a few accidents, the government said, nope, every organization has to do it if you have people working at heights. Or training for working in confined spaces, or AOTA compliance, right? Seneca just undertook this in the last couple of years, and every employee at Seneca who's customer facing has to go through AOTA training. Now, here's the way it works. Seneca put together some AOTA slides, so to speak, and they use Adobe Captivate, by the way. And employees were told to go to the training. So their learning management system automatically saw who went into the training, because we have to log in. And then we went through the training. There's slides with text on it, some images, there's a couple of quizzes in between. And if you get a question wrong, they tell you where the answer was, so you got to go back. But they also measured that how many people successfully completed it. And their job simply to the government was to report if all of us completed it. And I think we had to reach 80% by last January. But what if I just skipped it going forward, right? I mean, anybody could just do that, saying, hey, okay, I did it. Well, the system's going to measure how long you are on a slide. And reasonably, as a training person, you would say the average person needs to be on this slide for no less than 45 seconds. Some people read slower than others. If you skip through a quiz and just answered wrong, all the answers are wrong or randomly, it'll know. It knows how long you pause. And then that's feedback for you to go back and reinforce it, right? Now, the type of stuff that we would do metrics on to prove a return on investment, think about it. If I put $100,000 into training, what is my return? The return could be monetary. It could be very objective or quantitative, like improvement in revenue, reduction in accidents, fewer customer complaints, more innovative products designed. But it could be on the qualitative side as well. Sometimes it's not all about the money. It could be, did the customer service experience improve? Right? Did the student experience improve? Is the person a better emotionally intelligent person? Do people display more leadership competencies? You get the idea, right? But we can measure the return on training by seeing improvements in the things I've listed here, like safety, teamwork. I think you get the idea. There's pretty much anything you would train can be measured to see if it got better or not. Now, I'm going to show you a little example here, and then I want to show you some actual Excel data as well. So, a company developed e-learning modules to train customer service staff. Okay, you know what that might look like. Let's say they're working in a retail store. Now, the training focused on retention of the customer and upselling. So not just selling something, but knowing how to sell them on additional things. So, for example, if you walked into a sporting goods store to buy a hockey stick, that's fine. But is a salesperson good enough to remind the customer to maybe buy some hockey tape, maybe some skate guards, maybe some skate sharpening, upselling, right? That's a skill. It's a competency. You need to know how to do it. The total cost of all the modules for the training, which includes your time, the effort, the software, the equipment, was $28,000. Okay? Now, let's say we commissioned you to do it, right? As a student, a graduate, your fee would be about $10,000 out of it. Okay? So it's not cheap. It costs money. In fact, here, I'll give you perspective. The e-learning work that you're doing for my course, the project, the build, if you were to fully develop it, every module, generally the price tag on the street would be about $25,000 to $30,000. If you were to do a full course, like a 13-week course with everything, all the multimedia, everything embedded, tested, everything, Maybe the price tag's about $75,000 to $100,000 to develop it. Now you, if you're a consultant, you might go in and say, I'll do it for $20,000 each. Nothing wrong with that. Now, getting back to our example, if 100 customer service representatives were given the training and it was designed to be done over a 3-month period, fine. You check your boxes off saying, I did it. I'm a hero. I did it. Nope. You're going to sit back and say, okay, what happened to my sales? Before the training, they were $12 million. And you do this over a year, okay? And number of complaints were at 9.6%. But after the training, my sales went up to $13.8 million. That's $1.8 million more. And not all of it is attributed to the training. Some could just be the economy is better. But certainly there's a change. And my customer service complaints went down to 5.3%. That's a 15% improvement in sales, and complaints down by 44%. You have to now have confidence in the fact that your training had some effect, for sure. Okay? Now, realistically, I know you know what a control group is. You've heard about this, right? I wouldn't just roll training out to everybody. I mean, not every organization is going to do this scientifically, but let me approach it, okay? Let me approach it this way. I will take the 100 customer service reps I have and put roughly 50% of them on a list and another 50% on another list. One's a control group, one's an experimental group, the green box versus the orange box at the bottom. Now, make sure that the cross-section of people you put on the list are representative. I mean, not all people working in one city versus another, different genders, different age segments. Cross-representation. Now, the 50 who are in the experimental group or the focus group will actually be exposed to the training. The other 50 won't. And you plot it on a chart. You know how to do charts in Excel, okay? I did an example in my other course, the HRIS course. But when you plot it and you see a remarked or significant difference, an improvement in the performance of those who got the training versus who didn't, you now have established validity or confidence that the training had impact. Now, because you're doing it with 50 people, you've achieved reliability as well. You're not just doing this at one person. And if you do it again next year and the year after and the year after and it keeps working, you've achieved more reliability. Make sense? Now, what is the word significant? What is significant improvement to you? This is where you get to decide. Okay, I mean, it will be a joke if all you improved, that the only improvement was sales went up by 0.0002%. That can be explained by something else altogether. A rich person moves next to your store, loves sports if you're selling sporting stuff. So significant to you would mean something substantial. And in my opinion, if you spent $28,000 to develop and deploy the training and you recovered around $28,000, to me, that's a good win-win. I mean, something good came out of it. But I'd look for a 1% improvement, 2%, 5%, 10%, 15% is even better. You get the idea. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to get into that level. Listen, if you're going to be specializing in training and development, right? I'm speaking to everybody in HR. But if you're going to specialize, you're going to take these very broad endpoints I'm giving you and really dig deep. You're going to read 20 articles on metrics alone. And then you're going to create that culture of scientific thinking within your own department when you start working, saying, we never used to keep metrics on performance improvements. Now we're going to. Even at the smallest level, you're going to start doing it. Now let me show you in real terms what data would look like in Excel. Now, you might have seen this data before, and you certainly do know Excel, right? So if you have to revisit some stuff in Excel, go do it. And you know pivots as well. So don't let the mountain of data here complicate your vision, okay? Just let me zoom it in. It is a sporting goods store. It's like Sporting Life, okay? We have locations in different places. We have Eglinton, King Street, Montreal, Vancouver. And these are all employees. Now, some employees are salespeople, sales associates, sales managers. Now, I'm just going to skip over to the right. Okay, you can ignore most of this data. But you see this column here, X? That's called sales effectiveness training. So we had Seneca graduates develop training that teaches salespeople to be more effective, to increase sales, to change the customer service experience, to upsell. Okay? When a customer leaves the store happy with their purchase, they're less likely to experience post-purchase stress disorder. And they're less likely to return the product. Got it? And they're more likely to come back and buy more. Now, we keep track of who has enrolled and completed the course, which means passed, enrolled and failed the course, enrolled and did not ever show up to the course or came but then never finished it. And then the U would be you were just not invited. It means you should have done it, but you were not invited, okay? Let's have a look. So I'm going to use sales as a measure, if you don't mind, okay? Did sales improve? Now I'm going to go into pivots. And let's take a look. First of all, I want to know total sales. And if you know pivots, you know that that's just a count of sales. We have to right-click and average out the sales. So on average, my sales right now are $68,734 per person. Not bad. Now, let's have a look at the sales of people who went through SET. Kind of surprising. Now, I'll get rid of the blanks. Blanks are people who were never invited or don't need the training, okay? So take a look. The people who completed the training successfully, on average, had sales of $67,000. And we'll assume this is after the training. People who attended but failed, and that might not be the fault of the person taking it. It might be the fault of the actual training. But look at their sales. They're like significantly huge down. It's $50,000. But people who never even came to the training, their sales are a lot more. $73,000. What does that tell you? And of course, the people who never were invited to the sales, they're about the same as the people who completed it. And what that tells me is the effectiveness of SET, sales effectiveness training, is somewhat neutral. In fact, it might be a distractor because the people who never got it, their sales are quite a bit higher than the people who took it. So it's not like they're gaining anything insightful. Now, of course, if I did this over a period of time and tweaked the training, I might get better results. So that's a nice little view of how to look at data and measure effectiveness of what you trained. So I'll give you an example. There's a hospital, and those who took my last course, you know this example, but there's a large, very large hospital that had pharmacists. And if you know the pharmacy department in the hospital, they don't always have the best offices with windows. They're usually in the basement, and they work hard. The job they do is very, very significant to a patient's performance. And what happened was the HR department got a lot of complaints. It became a theme, a trend, a pattern. A lot of complaints from pharmacists saying that they are super stressed, experiencing a lot of anxiety, not because they don't know how to do their job. They're doing it very well. But the anxiety and stress stem from the fact that they couldn't read the doctor's handwriting. And this was a time before digital health came about. You know, you've heard this, right? Doctors write prescriptions. You can't read it. So what the pharmacists had to do in a very large hospital, they had to go all the way up to the patient's room. That's a lot of walking and a waste of time if they can avoid it. They had to go to the room and check the charts. First of all, make sure it's the right patient. Second, make sure the right dosage and the right medication fits with what's wrong with the patient. So pharmacists had to learn a lot about the medical stuff as well, all because they couldn't read the writing. So what happened was the HR department said, okay, no problem. Let's take care of it. Thank you for telling us. And they started developing training, 2 types of training for the doctors. Now, doctors' time is very valuable. We get it. So what they did is they did it in 10 to 15 minute segments for doctors over a period of a month or 2. Number 1, they did untraining. Oh yeah, you can untrain behavior. So they did what you call penmanship training, how to write or how not to write. Little exercises you do to not write bad. And then they were given how to write properly, penmanship, how to print properly. And they tried different types of pens. And after completing this training at significant levels, in significant numbers, there was a remarkable improvement in the writing, which resulted in our objective is to reduce the amount of stress and complaints from pharmacists. Pharmacists are much more relaxed. They didn't have to chase after the patients. They could read the actual script. You see? Now, the cost, of course, immeasurable. I mean, saving a life, of course, if you spend $100,000 on this training, it'll be well worth it, right? So I hope you get the idea and you would investigate more about the metrics related to learning and development. And any specialty or any area of HR you go to, always ask yourself, how can I measure this? And if it means that you calculate an average if it improved, the median, maybe the spread, mean absolute deviations, whatever these numbers are, as long as you can show that there's an improvement from one period to another, that adds a lot of power to you to prove that what you did was worth it and give me more budget money in the future to do more.